Well, I really don't like that music, but I keep forgetting to do what I need to do and put together an intro. Anyway, welcome to Freight Broker Live. Today is Wednesday. What's today's date? I don't know. November 1st. It's 8 p.m. everywhere that matters. And we've got some stories to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the trucker that has had enough, because a trucker did something startling today. And I say startling, it's not startling that he did it, because, truckers are kind of, at wit's end. And it's startling that it worked. And what does that mean for other companies that potentially are withholding carrier payments and stuff like that? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a new article from FreightWaves that I'll put up in a little bit, where truckers are pushing the FMCSA to make brokers pay for detention time. Many of you guys know how I feel about detention. Drivers are incredibly underpaid when it comes to detention. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about C.H. Robinson, because they had really bad earning reports again. Another FreightWaves article, and then what is next for Convoy, because, well, we know that too. So it's gonna be interesting. Okay, this show, it's all gonna be about freight. I know a lot of people, are used to watching politics and stuff like that, but I've switched back into the freight industry. I love it, and I'm so much more happier. And so we're gonna be talking about freight today. So hopefully you guys all fasten your seatbelts. If the internet does drop for some reason when I live stream, it cuts out. Not quite sure why. I am recording the audio, and it'll be available as a podcast like it typically is. Anyway, so let's jump into some of this stuff. You guys may have seen earlier today, I tweeted it out. It's actually gotten pretty viral on social media about this truck driver that spray painted the side of his truck, drove to TQL's headquarters, and parked his truck in front of TQL headquarters, like literally in front, like on the sidewalk in front of their headquarters on their property, basically saying, pay me my money. So I don't know the whole scenario of how it happened, but this driver's been on social media talking about how he's going to do this for a long time, saying he's done it in the past, saying he did it at Coyote when they had claims or they had some short pay on him. And he said it worked then and he got paid, and everyone's like, sure. And then videos started coming out of him doing the very same thing at Coyote years ago, but a few months ago, but he didn't spray paint his truck. But this time you could see here, it's not zoomed in the right way, but he literally wrote, TQL, pay me my $8,000. I don't run for charity, on the side of his white beat up old reefer. And it's funny. And I'm not trying to like beat him up. Here's the thing. I don't like Chameleon Carriers. From the little bit I was able to research, this guy may be one. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But so he apparently had a claim. He hauls reefer freight. He's always complaining about freight brokers that are short paying him for claims. For anyone that doesn't understand how it works, every broker, or a lot of the large brokers, they have in their rate confirmations and in their broker carrier contracts, they have an agreement that basically says if you have a freight claim, they're going to withhold the value of that claim from your freight invoices. So, for example, say you have a $4,000 load and there's a $4,000 claim on it. You're not going to get paid that $4,000 for delivering the load until your insurance works out the claim. So whether your insurance pays out the claim and then the broker releases the money, or the insurance doesn't pay out the claim and then the broker offsets whatever the claim value is and pays the difference. Pretty much everyone does that. Pretty much every broker does that because they have to, because ultimately if the carrier doesn't have the adequate insurance, or the carrier, insurance denies a claim or something, the broker is liable for that expense, for the most part. So I believe every single carrier out there, or every single broker does that kind of thing, right? TQL is no different. TQL is kind of notorious for doing it because they're so big. And to be honest, it happened to me. I had my own trucks. We had a load with TQL. I think a pallet tipped over and a whole pallet was refused. The load, I think the value is right around $4,500. TQL withheld, $4,500 of our money and then released the rest. Now, we had a lot of money through TQL because we used to do this is when rates were good. So we used to do a lot of loads, and I had a lot of trucks that I owned. So they owed us some money. But here's the thing. Our insurance eventually, after like 45 days, our insurance ended up paying out the claim. And then TQL released the money. It's just part of the course of the business. Now, I could eat that difference because, well, I was making plenty of money with all the trucks that we had. And I had a brokerage. I was busy, so I was doing pretty good. This driver, I mean, who can, especially in this market, who could sit on $8,000, right? So this driver had enough. He probably had a pallet that, wasn't, refrigerator. Something happened that he had some sort of claim, and they ended up seizing, or what he claims, $8,000 from him. So he spray painted the side of his truck, drove to Cincinnati, Ohio, and parked outside of TQL's headquarters. And it's making the rounds all over social media, right? And I thought that was it. Like, I thought, okay, well, at least this guy is getting some sort of, publicity. Like, I know he was on a podcast. Good for him. He got screwed by this broker. So, and it's not even really screwed. See, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like he's being screwed by a broker because you signed the contract. Do you know what I mean? It's literally in their broker contract. Everybody could read it. Like, do you guys that are owner operators not read your contracts with the brokers? Would you go buy a car without reading the fine print? That's literally, it's especially when it's your business, it's a contract. Everybody should be reading the broker contracts. But that's what he ended up doing. He drove out there and blocked the entire thing. And then everybody kind of thought it was the end. I thought it was the end too, because I certainly did not believe TQL was going to do anything to pay him. Except the guy provided proof that TQL paid him the money, sent the money to the factory company, and then the factory company is releasing it to him. Now, it's just a screenshot of an email, but apparently the guy got paid. You know what I mean? He got paid for the money TQL owed him by painting his truck, painting his trailer, going and blocking the entrance to TQL. So the only thing I can surmise right now is that TQL must be preparing to invest a lot of money on construction for their place, because they're going to have to build a truck stop in the parking lot of TQL. Now that news broke that if your TQL owes you money for claims or whatever the case is, all you have to do is paint TQL, pay me my money, and then drive in front and park. I don't think this is going to make it go away. In fact, with the amount of people, here's the thing. If you've worked in the logistics industry, someone said, I know they just laugh at you if you actually try to negotiate the carrier packet or submit your own itemized rate sheet. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Then you don't work for them. That's the same thing. You don't work for the brokers where they're laughing at you because you're trying to alter their broker carrier contracts or rate confirmations. You think any of these big brokers, when they go into a shipper, they're getting, or even any of these big carriers that are going into shippers or the big brokers and putting them under contract, do you think they're just blindly following and agreeing to it? No, they're not. What they're doing is they're negotiating the terms that work best for them. I'm not saying you can do that with a small independent carrier can do that with every single broker, but I'm saying you must know what's in your contract or do the slightest bit of research, because TQL is notorious for holding back money for claims. Everybody can tell you, and rightfully so, they have a claim. They're on the hook for that money. If your insurance fails, and look at all this, remember that big accident in Colorado where the guy crashed and killed 5 people? And it turns out the trucking company hadn't had truck insurance for 3 years, and State Farm was negligent and actually reporting to the FMCSA that the guy had no truck insurance. Like, it happens. People's insurance, insurance is worse than brokers, if you ask me, right? Super expensive, blah, blah, blah. But look what ends up happening. Sometimes the claims do not get paid out. Sometimes the carrier decides to pay the claim themselves rather than see an insurance increase. There's all different reasons, but brokers, in essence, have to protect their bottom line. When it comes to losing their potential profit plus the cost of the line haul, if they have a claim that they end up having to pay out directly. I saw something the other day in one of the groups, and it was talking about a broker that was trying to figure out what to do because the carrier had a load of solar equipment that he just never delivered. So the broker's gone. The carrier can't do an insurance claim because the insurance, it wasn't damaged, it was stolen. So the insurance denied the claim, and he's on the hook for $100,000 worth of solar panels. And he can't get in touch with the broker. And now the shipper is going to sue him. And he's like, what do I do? And we're like, get a lawyer. Like, that's the only thing you can do. Because ultimately you didn't qualify your carrier properly and he stole your load. And he tried to hijack it and say, you got to pay me $5,000 more to deliver. This is the industry. This is the industry. And it's gotten so much worse. I'll be honest with you. It's gotten so much worse. I thought, because I was gone from freight for 2 years, so I didn't really pay attention to it that much. All this talk about freight transparency, all this talk about rate double brokering, all this talk about freight theft and fraud. It was not as prevalent as it is now 2 years ago. Not even close. Okay, the freight transparency argument, I think, has been going on. Whenever the market is down, everybody's like, oh, brokers are greedy. That's a given. It's going to happen every single time the rates start coming down. Everybody's going to blame, the economy on freight brokers because, well, they don't know the industry. So that's the only thing they can blame on. And the one solution to that is always just argue about freight transparency because that's apparently going to make it better, which doesn't make any sense. If you watch the video I put out this morning where I was talking about how, well, I'll talk about that in a second, but that's a perfect example of where freight transparency, it's a race to the bottom. Do you not understand that, all you freight transparency, proponents? It doesn't do anything. It's a race to the bottom because it's just going to cause reverse bidding and everyone's going to undercut themselves and undercut the next carrier and the rates are going to stay low forever. But it's kind of interesting. But what's going to be interesting now is to see how many trucks are going to show up at TQL tomorrow. And how many are going to show up in a couple of days? And how many are going to show up in a couple of days? You know what else is interesting? One of the largest go-to media organizations in the freight space did not have an article about this. And I thought that was very weird because this is a big story. And especially if you want page views, like this is clickbait as shit story. Like if I had time today, I would have wrote it on Freight Broker Live and put it out there. I just didn't have any time. You know what I mean? But this is the story to go out and say, pissed off trucker parks front of TQL and gets his money. Like that's the craziest part, that TQL actually paid him the money. Now you could make the argument that that they had already figured out that they owed this guy the money and they did it, right? And there's a lot of talk. There was someone that posted online saying that this guy had freight guard reports. He didn't under this authority that was on the truck. I checked the authority that was on the truck. He doesn't have freight guard reports. He should, in addition to figuring out how to do load securement or whatever caused the claim in the first place, he should also make sure that the people driving his trucks have CDLs because that'll put him out of business. Like his pullover, his roadside inspection where a non-CDL driver was just discovered driving a tractor trailer in August. Like you would think that he would have bigger fish to fry, right? Because if you don't have trucks on the road because you don't have the authority to do it, you would think losing $8,000 would be that big of a deal. But it seems like this driver, not only does he follow through with what he says he's going to do, he also has a backup plan for everything. For example, like he had previous posts about doing the same thing at Coyote, right? And being having claims and all this stuff on his other company, which ironically had 3 trucks as well. And you know what's interesting about it? When you look up the MC number for the other trucking company that this guy said he had all these claims and everything for, and all these freight guard reports, when you look up that authority, it was revoked yesterday. It was revoked yesterday. So all of a sudden, this guy has a new trucking company that's aged. He probably bought it on Facebook or something. He's got a new trucking company out there and he's running. It's the definition of a chameleon carrier. I'll be honest with you. It was involuntary revoked, his last authority. And now this authority, he's back out there doing the same thing, whatever it is, causing claims, And listen, I applaud the guy for going out and parking in front of TQL and getting his money. I applaud him for that. Would I ever do that? Fuck no, because I'm a professional, even as I just cursed, right? But no, I would never do anything like that because I think it's stupid. I would have sued or something like that. Or I mean, it worked. That's the thing. Like, would I ever do that? No, but it worked. Like, I did not think it was going to work, but it worked. And the guy is going to get his money back, which to me is just, or he got it back already, which to me is just insane. And good for him, for that regard. But there's going to be a lot of drivers that are going to go, I figured out how to get my money. Figured out how to get my money now. And they're going to go back. There it is. Now it's back. At any rate, I kept talking. That's what I'm going to keep doing. See, even though it drops the internet connection for some reason every time I go live, all day I'm fine. The second I go live, it drops it. I am recording the backup. I'll upload that as a podcast. You can listen to this on your podcast player of choice by looking up Freight Broker Live. We're going to be the top podcast in the freight space again. Trust me, it's not going to take that long. but it's already going to happen because we have a lot of listeners on the podcast. We have more listeners in the 24 hours after releasing a podcast than we do in the 48 hours of releasing videos, except for Facebook. We have a lot of people that watch on Facebook. So they watch after, not live. We don't have the live viewership that we used to, but I'm okay with that. So anyway, I applaud this truck driver for doing what he did, you know, in the sense that he got his money back, you know, because, or the money that he rightfully was owed, apparently, because they paid him. So my guess, and I don't know, because I haven't seen anything where he specifically says this is why they were holding it. It's because of a freight claim. You know, TQL is notorious for doing that because it's in their contract that you signed as a carrier. You agreed to have them take back the money up to the value of the claim, and then they'll release anything else. And here's the thing, they don't even block you from working with them. You can continue working for them. So say you have $4,000, say you do a $4,000 load and there's a $4,000 claim. Once that claim has been settled, you get that money back. Otherwise, they put it in an escrow account and it sits there. You can still run loads and you still get paid on those loads. They just withhold the other one. You know why this was a big deal? Because this guy factored his invoices. There's no way that a factoring company is going to know that that there's a claim on it, because typically what ends up happening is, and normally it's not caught right away. So normally what ends up happening is a load is delivered, the customer or the carrier goes and factors the invoice, factoring company pays it out to the carrier, factoring company then sends the invoice to the broker. A couple of days after, they go through accounting, they start noticing that there's damage notated on the bill or something like that. If it isn't caught initially, they notice that, you know, 2 pallets were refused or whatever the case may be. Then they trigger that holdback. So if the broker at that point, or say the carrier at that point has invoices that the factor has already paid the carrier, but the carrier or that the TQL has not paid the factor. Sorry, my dog's just opened the door. But if TQL has not paid the factor, TQL will offset those funds. So, for example, say the load's $1,000 and the claim is $10,000, and the carrier goes and does, you know, another 10 loads in the next 30 days, and the factor pays out all of those invoices, but they haven't been paid at all from TQL. They then stop it. TQL then stops it, sends notice to the factoring company that there's a claim on it and they're not going to be paid anymore. And then the factoring company says, whoa. If you have recourse factoring or even non-recourse, I still think they pull it back from you in this instance. They pull the money back from you. And they don't like debit your account. What they do is they say, okay, you're not getting any more factored invoices until we collect that $10,000 that we paid you already. So it causes a chain reaction, because then the driver's set going, you know, he didn't know there was a claim. There's nothing that he could do about it. And it ends up pulling it back even more and screwing up the driver even more. The driver then calls the broker. The broker doesn't really answer him. TQL, I mean, they're huge, got bad office. And if you get sour with any claim person, they hang up on you. I'm not surprised that he reports that the claim person hung up on him this morning. The guy painted on the side of the truck, TQL, pay me my $8,000. I don't drive for charity, and drove into the front of the TQL headquarters. I'm quite certain that he was probably pissed off, and he was probably cursing at the little lady that was sitting there answering the phones at TQL, you know, the one that doesn't get paid overtime. Yeah, and she was already pissed off, and she hung up on him, and that's what apparently set him off today, even though he's been saying he was going to do this for a long time. So I think it's interesting, you know, and, you know, again, I'm glad he got his money. I think he's going to have a hard time ever. See, but then again, I didn't publish his MC number. And I don't know if anybody else is actually going to publish his MC number. I mean, it is a story, you know, considering he appears to be a chameleon carrier. And for anyone that doesn't know what a chameleon carrier is, it's actually illegal and you get shut down by the FMCSA if you're caught. But it's essentially a carrier who loses their authority, suffers an involuntary revocation for whatever reason, and then they set up another carrier authority. Now, they're easily tracked, but typically, just like this guy, changes the address, changes the city and state, changes the phone number, but it's still his company. You know what I mean? It's still the same company, and they could track it via the VIN numbers of the truck and all that stuff. A lot of insurance companies have gotten wise to it as well now. But surprisingly, Carrier 411 didn't even have the connections between the two companies, which I thought was odd because that's literally their job. They didn't even have the connection. But I don't know, because normally Carrier 411 will have a list of VIN numbers, for either of these companies, they didn't have the VIN numbers, which I thought was a little bit odd. So, the Chameleon Carrier is something that kind of steers me away. And the fact that he doesn't pre-qualify his drivers, had non-CDL drivers driving his, and a bunch of other stuff. His safety scores are what he should be focusing on now. Now that he got his $5,500 or whatever he got paid back, now he should focus on his safer scores and, make sure he's hiring people that have CDLs and stuff like that, right? But that was an interesting story. I think it was one of the bigger stories today in the freight space. Ironically, nobody covered it, which is weird. But I'm not even going to try to guess why they're not covering it. It's, whatever. I can't say anything. I have a non-disparagement agreement. I'm not even kidding. So sometimes I'd like to say stuff, but I'm not going to. You can't disparage someone that you like. Like, yeah, whatever. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So many of you guys saw this video I put out this morning, and I'll just paraphrase it. I won't go through the whole thing again. But essentially, driver booked a load yesterday. Broker called this morning and canceled the load on us. Said that driver was told he had to be there at a certain time, and driver didn't show up at a certain time, which didn't make any sense. The driver is the team who's in Baltimore yesterday when he booked the load. There's no way that actually happened that way. But the broker was trying to get out of paying a truck order not used. So, and he succeeded at it because, for one, I let it slip that my driver hadn't delivered yet. My bad. Because otherwise he probably I could have probably won because the rate confirmation didn't have a delivery appointment on it. And see, that's the thing. It's very important to recognize your contracts. The rate confirmation that we signed yesterday for this carrier said it was a first come, first serve shipper 8 to 4, right? So there's no appointment. Therefore, the driver can't be late. Therefore, if drivers are en route to go pick up and the broker cancels, guess what? Truck order not used. And especially with the advent of GPS and all that stuff, we could actually prove that the driver was en route there. But I got a little pissed off this morning when the broker called me. So I ended up calling the driver. Their stories weren't meshing, right? The driver's like, I never told them I was empty in where, the southern state that's roughly 800 miles away from Baltimore, saying that, he was empty. He's like, I never told him that, and there was no mention of an appointment. So I called the broker back. I'm like, dude, you don't have a rate confirmation that says that, blah, blah, blah. He's like, but didn't you say he hadn't delivered yet? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, well, so we're not going to give you Tonu. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So it was my fault for saying anything, but I wasn't thinking about it. But then I start looking for another load for the driver, and I see the same load by a different broker. So I call that broker and I'm like, hey, man, or hey, lady, can you tell me about this load? She tells me about the load. And I'm like, is it picking up from such and such street and delivering to such and such street? Because I had the rate confirmation from the original broker. She's like, yeah, it is. And I said, well, can you match what the other broker was paying? And she's like, no, we don't even have close to that in it. And I said, listen, we just had this load pulled from another smaller broker. Can you tell me some stuff? And it turns out this broker was new, so she didn't know what she was doing. And so she's like, yeah. So she was going through the customer files, and she's like, yeah, we got the order from this customer at 6:50 a.m. local time. And I'm like, aha! Therefore, my driver didn't miss the 7 o'clock appointment because the shipper had already pulled it back from broker A, sold it to broker B, who was selling it cheaper to a carrier. So essentially, and guys, I'm a broker. I've been a broker for years and years and years. So I know exactly what happened because it's happened to me so many times. And if you watch the comments of that video on Facebook or YouTube, the video that I put out today, other brokers are saying the same thing. It happens all the time. Because basically what happened is shipper sent out a bid list to a bunch of different carriers, carriers and brokers, awarded one broker with the load who was paying pretty good money on it. And then probably after she tendered the load to him, another broker came back and said, I could do it for dramatically cheaper. And so then she pulls it back from the other one, comes up with some bullshit excuse about driver missing an appointment that's not there. So I feel like it's my duty, broker to broker. I called the broker A back and I explained the whole situation to him. And I'm like, hey, listen, I don't care about truck order not used. I don't even care about the load anymore. I want to tell you, you should drop this client. And he's like, what? And so then I tell him a story about the other broker. And he's like, this is like the 5th time she's done that. I've only got like 8 loads from her in the past quarter and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so why are you working with her? I said, man, I've been brokering for years and years and years. You know what I do the first time a customer pulls a load from me? I don't work with the customer anymore. If they pull a load and I find out they put it with someone else, no. You know, and then the first thing that thought, because this was the first load we ever did with this broker A, so I'm like, well, I'll take this customer. It'll be a new, direct carrier or direct customer for our partner carriers. And then I realized I don't want them. If they're going to pull back loads and do all that stuff and cancel loads, I don't want to deal with that. So it's just interesting because a lot of people, and someone made a good argument in the comment earlier, because they're like, a lot of people are arguing about freight transparency. Freight transparency is literally the reason why this happens, because a broker wins a load from a customer, posts the load. Every other broker, do you guys know what you get? Like as a carrier, you don't get to see the broker, or you don't get to see, well, you do. As a carrier, you can't post loads. But a broker can post, according to DAT. So on the DAT load board, a broker can post loads. A broker can search loads because you need to in terms of rating and figuring out where market costs are. They can post trucks and they can search trucks as well. So they have that advantage too. So in all reality, if you know where a shipment is originating or delivering to, that's one way that I will determine whether or not I want to go after a shipper. So I'll look at the area and I can typically find out, especially if a customer will send me lanes, I'll see the lane and then I'll throw the lane up on the boards. And I won't post a load. That's stupid. And I hate those phantom posts. I never do that kind of stuff. I don't know if I've ever done it where I post a phantom load just to get carriers to call in and give me the rates. Then I'll go and quote the load to the customer. I don't do that kind of stuff because I know what I'm doing as a broker. But what a lot of other brokers, they'll do that. And what a lot of, I lost my train of thought. That's a problem when it's super late at night. I lose my train of thought. And I say late at night, it's only 8 o'clock, but I'm old. And I get my beauty rest now. But yeah, it's bad business. I call it broker sniping. So basically they sniped the load from another broker to undersell it. And when I'm talking about underselling, there's like a $500 difference on this load. So either one, broker B, was going to make a tremendous amount of money on the load, which it wasn't the case because they pulled the load back because broker B sold the load cheaper, sold the team load for less than $2 a mile. Doesn't make any sense. Especially in a lane that should be paying $250 or so, but it's interesting. The whole market and the way this industry works is very, I don't know. I'm captivated by it. You know what I mean? Just, and I'm getting back into the Facebook side of things too. And even Reddit a little bit. I've never gotten much into Reddit, but I'm starting to now and just reading the different boards. And it's sad, to be honest, hearing some of the stories about truckers. I just saw one post where a guy's like, okay, I need help. And people are like, what do you need help with? And he's like, I need to know how to unwind my company. Like, do I, pull my authority first? Do I file bankruptcy first? Like, what is the procedure to give up, essentially? And I'm like, damn, bro. Because in all reality, that's what a lot of drivers, a lot of small businesses across America right now, especially in the transportation space, that's what they're facing. They're facing that, because rates aren't coming up fast enough for them to be able to sustain. I've noticed a difference between rates from last week to this week, and we're not talking a lot, maybe 10 or 15 cents per mile, but that adds up when you're talking about hundreds of trucks, and so I've noticed a difference. And, I'm starting to try to bring on trucks because I have a plan. Like I want to build dedicated lanes based on where people live. So I'm trying to, this morning I put out a bunch of Facebook posts on all the Facebook groups I have saying, hey, if you live in 3 certain states, I would love to have you come be an owner op with us because I want to build dedicated lanes around it where you're home every week and that kind of stuff, where you're still making good money because you just need to know what you're doing and have the time. Like that's why a lot of the small carriers, the ones that really hate brokers, they don't understand the industry to understand what a broker's doing. Like, for me, I could spend all day working and not sell a single load. You know what I mean? Or like, for example, I think today we booked 3 loads for the trucks I'm dispatching. I'm not dispatching a lot of trucks because I do a ton of other stuff. I'm not a dispatcher. I'm the chief strategy officer for the company. So it's a little bit different, but I'm on the boards all day and I'm running different lanes and I'm figuring out different things. And today I was looking at the total revenue for one of our trucks last month and how we could increase her revenue while still, as a company, our goal as a company is to make money, but we do it differently. You know what I mean? So I was trying to think, okay, is there certain lanes that I can run that would put her home more often because she has kids, but also generate the same amount of money she's making by rolling across the country. And so I'm running different lanes. I am calling on some loads to find out the specifics about it. And it's really weird too. Like, have you ever called a broker and they ask for your MC number before they're willing to tell you anything about it? Do you know what they're doing here? I'll tell you a little secret. Do you know what they're doing? They're typing in your MC number to see if you've run that lane before, because they're not going to offer you any more than what you ever run that lane. That's just one of the reasons. One, I'm quite certain some of these big brokers have like a color code for the carriers where they can, where it's like green. That means that they could sell the load super cheap to you and you're liable to take it. Either one, because it's a backhaul and you know what you're doing, or two, you have no idea what your cost to operate is, and they know they can sell you a cheap ass load and you're going to take it because you don't know. They're not going to sell you a high price load if they could see that you were consecutively running for $1.75, right? Because here's the thing, every broker has lane data. So every load that you've ever done for the broker is in that system. So every broker could see the last load you did and the 10 loads you did for that broker before. So if you're consecutively right around of $1.75 to $2.25, do you think they're going to come out of the gate and offer you $2.50? No, they're going to offer you between $1.75 to $2.25 because they can see that's where you average. And that's how brokers make money. There's so many different scenarios in how they make money too, because then you got to go off other lanes. You got to go what the lane pays versus what they could sell the load for versus what their competition is trying to go out and get that business. There's a lot to it. And I think if you plan your routes, and I don't know how you could do it as an independent op. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how you can do it as an independent operator, like someone with your own authority, because it takes hours on the boards, on the load boards and calling different brokers. And ideally, you want to get those loads before they even touch the load boards. And that's the thing about building dedicated lanes, because you don't even need to build dedicated lanes with customers or shippers or brokers even. You don't. The only thing you need to do is be traveling that lane all the time and get it so when a load pops on a broker's desk, they're like, oh, I got a load picking up in Chattanooga. Let me call TRC because I know they're out of Chattanooga and they're running that lane every single day, because they'll know it in the back of their head. Then they don't even go. That's how you end up making a lot of money. Someone said, no, it's not. Sorry, Steve. We always ask MC first, always. All would, I imagine. Yes, you can see history, but it's more for safety. Yes, you can see history, but it's more for safety. What? To find out if they're a real broker? Because your carrier qualification doesn't happen until after the load is going. You're not trying to, well, you can do that too. How is it for safety? Because if a broker that's never been set up with, you're still going to go through the same procedure to try to sell them a load. So here, let me put this in the comments so you can see what this says. Because this is Melissa K. She said, no, it's not, Steve. When I said, everyone asks for your MC number, brokers ask for your MC number when you call, because they know if you're selling cheap loads or if you're hauling cheap loads. That's what I believe, because I've been a broker for half a decade, or for almost 2 decades now. So that's how I did it when I was a broker. But Melissa, who's apparently a broker as well, said, no, it's not. We always ask the MC first, always. All would, I imagine. Yes, you could see history, saying the same thing I just said, but she said it's more for safety. So how does safety apply when it's a new carrier? Because you're not pre-qualifying the carrier. You're not running them through Carrier 411 or checking their safer scores when you're trying to sell them the load, because no carrier is going to wait online for you to do that all before you even tell them about the load. It's simply not going to happen. So the reason why the majority of brokers are doing it and checking your authority and asking for your MC numbers, because they're pulling up the lane data. They're pulling up their historical data. In all reality, that's what makes brokers successful. Because then when you have that data combined with that data combined with market data, you put all that data together, and then you have a really good rate that you can go and sell to your customers. So it's interesting. Mike said you need someone at home to help you get set up paperwork. Yeah, we're not even talking about carrier packets. To be honest, carrier packets can be done with a push of a button. Like if I was ever going to set up a new carrier authority, the first thing I would do is book a load with someone that uses the DAT onboarding system, book a load with someone that uses my carrier packets or blah, blah, blah. Find all the other carrier packets, highway, whatever all the other ones that brokers use. Get that data, because basically once you put it in once, you don't have to do all that data again. All you do is you go like this, bum, 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 scroll 20 minutes because you don't read the broker carrier contracts. You scroll, boom, then you find the signature, you sign it, boom, the packet's done right on your phone. The hardest part is booking the loads, is taking the time and finding loads, because it's too easy to say, oh, I'm going to play on DAT for 20 minutes and find a load. And after 20 minutes, you're pissed off. You start getting nervous. You're like, am I going to find anything? And you end up taking a load when 20 minutes later, a better paying load will come out. Now, you can't cancel your load, go, take the other better load. But you could know that, oh, maybe if I wait till 11 o'clock, other loads are going to post up. Or maybe you say, hey, you call that broker. Someone posted a better load after. You call them and say, hey, listen, I already accepted the load. I would have accepted your load. How many of these do you get? Do you get them often? I'm in Chattanooga every single day. Let me take that load, the next time. Call me directly. That is how the market works, and that's how you could treat a broker like a customer. And then you probably wouldn't be complaining about how much a broker makes, because at that point you'd be making enough money that you don't give a shit how much a broker makes. That's kind of like the whole freight transparency argument. Everybody says, oh, it really matters to us how much freight brokers are making. And they're under the guise that freight brokers are making 50, 60, 70, 100% profit margins on every single load. Because there are some people that firmly believe the economy has nothing to do with the reason why rates are low. They believe it's all because freight brokers are greedy. And those are the people that shouldn't be in trucking, just to be completely honest with you, because they don't understand the market. They don't understand supply and demand. They don't understand if there are more trucks in an area, less loads, the loads are going to sell for shit. They're going to sell really, really cheap because there's so many trucks. One truck, they could bid against each other. That's what happens. Look at JB Hunt 360 when it first came out. Everybody's like, yeah, this is going to be great. And within 2 weeks, people are like, it's really cheap. Because carriers were bidding against each other, bidding lower and lower. And almost all these platforms now, especially if you're bidding on the dedicated lanes on any of these big brokers that have their online platforms, if you look at their dedicated freight, it'll show the lowest bid. It'll show the bid that you have to beat in order to be awarded that contract lane. And I was looking at loads today that people are bidding on 12 or 6 month contracts, 12 week or 6 month contracts. They're bidding $1.50 a mile. And that's all inclusive. That includes fuel. What carrier is bidding $1.50 a mile? Granted, they're short hauls, but they're not in a good market, and you're coming back empty because they were drop trailers or they were hook trailers that you got to bring back. And they're bidding $1.50 per mile for all miles. It's insane. But that's how some people do it. Some people can make money. I don't know. Melissa said we've only made 5 to 7% margins averaged out. Yeah, and that's the thing. C.H. Robinson today put out their earnings report. Bad. C.H. Robinson's revenues were down 28.7% from third quarter of last year. Gross profits were down almost 29%. Income from operations was down a whopping 60.5%. Adjusted margin was down 1,450 basis points to 17.9%. That's insane. That's insane. Those are huge numbers. And it's funny because the way FreightWaves frames the article, it's weird because they tweeted it out and it made it sound like it was much bigger. So I was like, wow, because they were talking the other day how freight brokers, this is going to be the freight broker bloodbath, which is weird because people will applaud that. Like when it's like a trucker bloodbath, everyone's like, oh, sad, truckers are going out of business. And then when it's a freight broker bloodbath, they're like, ha, bye. We don't care about your employees. We don't care about your livelihoods because you're greedy sons of bitches. That's what they believe. It doesn't make sense. Someone said $1.50 barely covers fuel. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how anybody could do that. To be honest, survive on $1.50 a mile. I don't know, but apparently they can, and I'm not quite sure how that works. But it's a weird industry. It's a fascinating industry, to be honest, especially when you try to forecast rates in the future. Like here's the thing too, because we're in RFP season. So right now everyone's sending out requests for quotes and requests for proposals for lanes where they're bidding awards or contract freight for the next 6 or a year even. There's not a chance in hell. I could have the biggest customer in the world come right now and say, we'll give you all of our freight right now at current rates, but you got to lock into a year contract. Not a chance in hell. Actually, I can't say that because I don't I'm not my own boss. If my bosses tell me to do that, sure, that's what I'm going to do very quickly because I'll do what they tell me to do. But I will fight back against it and be like, you guys shouldn't do this, because in all reality, a year from now, rates could be in the 3s or 4s. Our national average, I don't know if it's changed, but according to DAT the other day, it was $1.54, I think, was the national van average. But yeah, and it could have been for a particular lane. I don't remember, because that just seems low every time I say it. Because just like someone said, Jeff said in the chat, $1.50 barely covers fuel. And he's 100% correct. $1.50 barely covers fuel. And then when you add driver pay and your maintenance and your truck payments and your insurance payments and your maintenance per mile, reserves that you should do and all the other things there's no way. There's no way. The cheapest one I've seen in this market was $1.74 per mile. And then if you want to add another 20 cents, because I think that was with a 15-cent buffer for maintenance, if you want to add another 20 cents, this one owner op that we have working for us is sitting right about $1.94 per mile. It's his break even, including 60 cents driver pay, 60 cents per mile driver pay. And it all depends, because the ATA or ATRI came out and said that some of the big trucking companies, that the national average for them is $2.34 per mile. That's what it costs for them to break even. Which, I mean, you could make the argument, say, man, it seems high. But I would make the argument and say, well, no, because they're paying drivers more. Even though some big carriers now are cutting their bonuses and cutting their driver pay. But a lot of these carriers are paying drivers more. They're paying them, 60, 70 cents per mile for being company drivers, which is high. I mean, if you got a company, especially if you only have 2-3 years experience and you're getting 65, 70 cents per mile, that's pretty good, It's pretty good. I'm not a big fan. Well, I won't say that, but I like the per mile pay. If I had my way, that's how all company drivers would be per mile. Because in all reality, one, it's not percentage based. I understand why a lot of companies push for the percentage base, because your drivers care more about it. They care more about taking bigger loads because they're getting a percentage of the load. And I understand that. I like, and to be honest, and this is selfish, but I like cent per mile drivers, like company drivers that get paid by the mile, because they're drivers. They want to go out and drive. They get paid by how many miles they drive. It's not about getting the biggest load, because sometimes you may find a load that you have to sit on for 3 days, and it seems really good because it's paying $1,800 and only going 500 miles. Seems really great, but then you realize that you're losing all those days. It's not that great. You're making $600 a day. Come on, get out of here. But a lot of people don't know. Someone said, have any of our owner operators invested in electric tractors? I don't think so. Max said, F this fake person selling bullshit. This has been a pretty insightful show, so I'm sorry you're sad. I'm sorry you're sad, Max. And then he said, blah, 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 blah. I guess we must have a middle schooler watching. Congratulations, Max. It's probably bedtime, right? What time is it? 8:42. It's probably past your bedtime. You got school early in the morning, Maxie. Maxi pads there. Scott said he started out in 1991 at 23 cents per mile. Yeah, that's crazy. I remember when I was, and it was much, much after 1991. So I think probably right after I graduated high school in 2001, 2002, I traveled across country. I was like a traveling bum. Like I was, seeing the country. And I remember riding across country in a tractor trailer. A buddy's dad had a tractor trailer, and I rode with him, and he was talking about how he got paid. And I think he got paid $34 for one of the big megas that's still out here. So it's crazy. It's crazy stuff. Someone said eating is not good for you. So you're trying to call me fat? All right. See how fat I am when I break the national powerlifting record in January. See how fat I am then, fucker. I've decided I'm going to do it, but it's really bad too, because many of you guys know I went golfing last week and I got actually pretty sore. I actually think I injured my knee. I'm still limping, and it's been a week. So I don't know what I did. Like, I tried to deadlift yesterday. I couldn't lift any higher than 405 because my knee felt like it was just going to give out. I don't know what I did to it, but it's scary. I was telling my wife I should go get an MRI, but I don't want to because bad knees run in my family, and I probably hurt my knee somehow. I've had a bad knee for years, but it's not feeling good. I've been sleeping on the couch and trying to elevate it at night when I sleep, which makes it feel a little bit better during the day. But That's bad. But I also brace really heavy when I bench, so I'm using my legs a lot. So it's like you have like, so imagine this is your knee, but I have a lot of outward pressure by the way that I brace because I bench press a lot. So it like pushes my knee out and it feels, my knees get sore. Max said, been a long time since I trolled you. Normally you block me by now. I don't have any interest in blocking people. If you want to watch the show, you watch the show. If you don't want to watch it, you don't want to watch it. Just try not to be a distraction in the chat, Max. Like that's all I have to say. Like if you're coming here to troll, just don't do it, man. Just go somewhere else. Or if you want to, if you enjoy actually learning about something that you may or may not like, then watch it, you know? And if you don't like it, shut up. All right, so here's the last story I'm going to talk about now. And this one's kind of interesting. This is about detention. So the Freightways has an article out, says truckers push for FMCSA to make brokers pay for detention time. That's kind of interesting. They start off by saying if drivers have to be federally regulated by hours of service rules, brokers should pay drivers for the time lost waiting to pick up freight because it ends up making roads less safe. Now, that's the argument of a group of owner-operators and small trucking companies as the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration plans a new study on the effects of driver detention time on road safety and trucking operations. Now, this comes as a study. Let's see if it says who it is. Because it wasn't any of, I think the OIDA was part of it. It wasn't the NOOA. Yeah, it was the OIDA who's been mentioned in here, and the American Trucking Associations has also mentioned it. So for anyone that doesn't understand, detention is what happens when a driver goes to a shipper or receiver and they're stuck waiting for their freight to be either be ready, loaded, offloaded, whatever. That detention rate has been the same since I entered the industry. I'd be curious to see whoever that was that said you started driving. Scott, you started driving in 91 at 23 cents per mile. What was the detention rate back then? Do you remember? Because when I started in trucking, which was probably 2004 or 2005, there was no, or detention was still $35 an hour after 2 hours. It's never been different since I started in this industry. It's always been $35 an hour. Sometimes you'll find a broker that'll pay 40. Sometimes you'll find a broker that pays 50. You had Uber when they first came out, they were paying what, 75, $80 per hour. And then once they built up all the capacity and sucked all that capacity from the market in order to go sell, you know, their capacity to shippers, then they lowered the detention rate to national standards. I remember when they did it. I was doing the Freight Broker Live show, the first one. And I remember when they did it, I was so pissed because I've been a long time proponent that detention should at least be $80. It should probably be more now. The cost to operate has been more since it was when I first started. So I don't know what it is now, or I don't know what it should be now. But back, 4 or 5 years ago, when I used to talk about detention all the time, I said detention should be at least $80 an hour after 2 hours. And to be honest, you should build in the 2 hours into your rate. You know what I mean? That's when you're booking on a load, especially like, what do you guys, all of you that drive for a living, if you book a load and the broker doesn't tell you, but you get the rate con, you're going to a Walmart distribution center, you're kind of screwed because you didn't build it into the rate. But if you know you're going to Raymond, New Hampshire, and you're carrying food, guess where you're going? You're going to a Walmart distribution center. So build in detention to your rate because you're likely going to have to wait. When I used to go to the Walmart, there was one, what was it? Pittston, Pennsylvania, Raymond, New Hampshire. When I'd go to those ones, I had a tablet, and this was back when tablets weren't even like normal yet. Like when not everybody and their brother had a tablet. But I used to bring a tablet and I'd watch like Netflix or actually, no, we didn't have like wireless data at that point. So I would download videos to watch because I also like to do the trade shows. So I do trade shows at like the Javits Center because you get paid $40 an hour after 2 hours free. Well, actually, with the detention or for trade shows, it didn't matter. You got paid as soon as you got there, as soon as you checked in. But I would sit there for like, I think the longest I ever waited getting paid for detention was $15 an hour or 15 hours at $40 an hour. And then I ended up picking up the load, bringing it back to my warehouse where a tractor picked it up and took it. So I love those ones. But anyway, so this is basically saying that they want brokers to be on the hook for detention, like, which they should be. If you're at a shipper receiver for over 2 hours, the broker should be paying you. You know, a lot of people think it's an hour. I still think it's 2 hours because, again, I think it's your responsibility to build it in your rate. But I think brokers, it should be automatic. And here's the thing. We all have ELDs now. If you drive a truck, you have an ELD. It's not hard to prove how long you were at a shipper or receiver. You know what I mean? So if you're requesting detention, it should be automatic. I don't know how you could do that without increased regulation. I don't believe in increased regulation, but you could, if you say, hey, I was at your shipper for 3 hours, you owe me $40 or $80 for detention, whatever the detention rate should be. I don't know. I would say at least $80. It's probably more now with inflation, probably $100 an hour. Because think about how much it costs for you to idle your truck and sit there and how much you're losing by not driving. That's the part that everyone always forgets, I think, except the drivers. They all know that because they get paid by the mile. So if you're sitting there and you're not moving, guess what? You're not making any money. So drivers truly do understand the plight of detention. But I saw an argument on one of the comments about this. I think it was on LinkedIn. It was a broker that was saying, okay, well, if brokers are going to be on the hook to pay detention, no matter what the scenario is, if they go to a shipper and the shipper takes 2.5 hours, if the broker is going to be liable for that half hour of detention, should the carrier be liable for when they cancel a load? And that's interesting. Or when they show up late to a load. And that's an interesting argument. And a lot of carriers would probably say no. You know what I mean? No, the carrier should have the right to refuse a load. The carrier should be able to show up late to an appointment. Probably not the carriers that watch this show. Probably a lot of the guys that are in that NOOA, owner-operator group, they would probably be like, oh, no, F the brokers. They shouldn't be getting paid. But if it was up to me, and a lot of them do it now. They fine. That's a new thing, too. I've gotten more rate confirmations that have line-by-line accessorials that make up the total rate. Like on-time delivery, $500 fee. That's literally, they call it a bonus now. So they sell you the rate at $4,000, and then you get the rate confirmation. It's got fuel separated, which is fine. It's better for our drivers. And then you have an accessorial for load tracking for $100. So it says load tracking bonus, $100. And then on-time delivery bonus, $500. So in all reality, your base rate is actually what, $3,700 or $3,300, and then they have $200 worth of accessorials that they don't need to pay you if you don't track or do any of that stuff. It's kind of crazy, man. It's crazy. It's very funny. Scott said you don't remember what they paid for detention back then. Yeah. Max said Elon Musk is going to take your jobs with self-driving electric trucks and AI robotic drivers. Hey, did you hear Aurora Technologies, that AI what do you call them? Semi-autonomous? The ones that have to have the drive or the engineer in the truck, a CDL driver, but the truck drives itself on the Texas highways. They've opened up more lanes in Texas, so there's even more autonomous trucks. I'd be curious to find out if any of those autonomous trucks have been involved in accidents yet, because we're due for one. We're due for it happening pretty soon, which is sad. I'm not talking for it. Level 4. Thank you, DFM. Level 4. But I don't know. It's interesting. See, that's the thing about the freight industry. I don't know how you cannot be entertained. Like, how many people, not a lot of people don't want to type in the chat. But I'm curious, how many people, if you don't work in the freight industry and you know nothing about it, and you're here from the political days, and you didn't watch before any of the freight, but you've actually watched this whole show, type number 1. Like, just type the number 1 in your chat right now, because I'm curious how many people are here. Because that was one of the reasons why I was really happy to come back and talk to this, because there's going to be people that have no knowledge of the trucking industry that are watching and are learning about it and seeing things, which I like. And maybe there isn't, because no one's typing 1. Melissa said, we deduct for no tracking. We get charged from customer. Yeah. And I mean, we've had that a lot, but I also panicked too today, because we had a customer that uses Trucker Tools tracking. And I know Trucker Tools may be watching this show. Hi. Your tracking software is not that great. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what it is, but it's the drivers can't get it to connect half of the time. Pretty much any driver that we've tried to have it work, it just doesn't really work well. And so today was one of those cases where they were trying to connect to oh no, that's Truck Stop that watches. Maybe you have a tracking thing that probably does work. The Truck Stop social media team watches this channel, so shout out to them. Trucker Tools now. I actually had a problem with Trucker Tools with the old Freight Broker Live days. They canceled the advertising agreement because I got a little too confrontational. But whatever. It is what it is. That's why we just don't do advertising anymore. Maybe every now and then I'll mention our trucking company. Maybe now and then I'll mention our coffee side. But I don't care about advertising. I don't need the advertising. I do the show because I think it's helpful to people. When it stops being helpful, I probably won't do it anymore. But so far, I mean, we have a lot of people that listen to the show every day as a podcast, way more than that watch the show. So it's cool. Is a rational American returning? I don't know. My wife doesn't want me to. She says I'm so much happier now. So I'm kind of inclined to listen to her about it. So, because I was mentioning it to her after I talked about it on Monday. Because, on Monday I was saying maybe I will come back and start talking about politics on my other social media channels a couple of days a week. I don't really want to. I'm so much more happier now. And I'm busy. Like, I'm busy all day, and so I don't really have time because talking about the political issues takes a lot more time because I like to be super factual with it. Like trucking, I know inside and out. The political stuff takes me a little bit more time. I have to do more research, and I can't do that when I'm working now because I don't work for myself. So it's a little bit different. But so I don't know. But last story I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do it real quick because I know DFM Data Corp wanted it. Flexport announced Wednesday that it has acquired Convoy's technology stack. Now, FreightWaves first, or didn't first, I think Reuters was the first one to report it on Friday, that the two startups were in talks for Flexport, a venture-funded freight forwarder, to acquire Convoy, a freight brokerage that shut down on October 19th. So many of you guys may have remembered Convoy was a big digital freight brokerage, one of the first. They called themselves the Uber of freight before Uber Freight even came out. So they've been around for a long time. They had a pretty cool app. They were the first ones to build this, like the online freight matching. They're the ones that pretty much started it, right? VC funded for over $500 million, and they suddenly shut down. What was it? Like 2 weeks ago, suddenly shut down, closing everything down and just saying, F it, we're done. Laid off the remaining 500 employees they had, and that's it. But apparently Flexport, who's been in the news for their own thing, they're one of the first freight matching systems for international freight forwarding, like container shipping. So like if you want to ship a container to China, you can log on, create an account, and go find out exactly how much it's going to cost you via the Flexport app. It's pretty interesting, to be honest with you. I remember when Flexport first came out too, and I was like, this is awesome. And I don't even ship international, but I was like, holy crap. Like they're giving you actual rates on container shipments to China or Russia or, any other big, I don't do internationals. I have no idea. But any of these big ports all across the country or the world, rather, you could order right online, have the container delivered right to your warehouse, load it up and go. And so I just thought it was really cool. So it makes sense that they're doing it, especially because Uber's CEO or Uber Freight's previous CEO, the president, the guy that was running it, Dan, whatever his face is, he actually was hired by Flexport a couple of months ago, I think in March, to pretty much figure out a way for their domestic operations to take hold. Now, it would be interesting because I think if they did relaunch Convoy as like Flexport's Convoy, Flexport would probably be their biggest customer, because then Flexport could say, hey, instead of us dropping your container at a CFS station or whatever, if they're doing the whole thing, they may just be doing port to port instead of door to port or port to door or any of that stuff. But they can now deliver it straight to your warehouse, like different stuff. It's pretty cool. Bill Diagret. Yeah, that's right. They use tariffs required. Yeah, because they're NVOCCs, so they have to, I believe. Right? Yeah, Flexport would be an NVOCC because they don't have their own boats. But do they? Because they have their own containers, though. So that's weird. Maybe they're a light asset base, but again, they're a VC funded one anyway. So that's going to be interesting, right? Because Flexport also bought Deliver. Deliver is, I don't really know what Deliver is. Deliver is like an expedited one. I know we just booked a load with Deliver, I believe, the other day. And I was surprised to see it because I remember hearing about them and Deliver's integration with like Shopify or something like that for small box retailing. And then when I was looking it up, because I remembered seeing the name. So when we booked the load with them, I was looking, or I didn't book it. I just saw it come through the main email. I then was like, why does the name sound so familiar? And then I started looking them up, and then I saw they got acquired by Flexport, I think last year. And I was like, this is interesting. But Anonymous said, I let it slip that driver wasn't unloaded. Haha, typical dispatcher. Yeah. I mean, in all reality, I'm not going to lie to him anyway. So I wouldn't have, you're going back to the beginning of the story because you said typical dispatcher, let it slip that the driver wasn't offloaded. I was trying to get a truck order not used. But if he directly said, was your driver heading to pickup? I would have said no. I would have said he's at his delivery heading to pickup. But I was asking for a truck order not used before I even said that. And then I realized that I could have not volunteered that information and got him a truck order not used. But in all reality, I'm an honest guy, and that's pretty much how I conduct my business. We've got a delivery right now for for a broker that we were supposed to pick up last week. Then the freak snowstorm in Montana shut down the interstate, and my driver was shut down. And so we didn't even get the load picked up until this week. And then his truck broke down. And so the broker, the broker's being amazing. And today when I called him and I'm like, hey, listen, we're going to get it by the end of the week. They're ordering the part. The part will be in by tomorrow or Friday. The truck will be up and running, and we'll bring it, across the country where it needs to go. And the broker was like, I have no problem with that. You've been in constant communication with me. We don't get this type of service much. And I was like, I know. You know why I'm good at it? Because I was a broker. And I treat the brokers just as I would any other shipper, because I used to be one. So I know exactly what it's like. I know what information I want. So I check in with these brokers. If I have delays or something, I'm checking in with them every 2 hours, whether they like it or not. Like today, I couldn't get the damn trucker tools thing to work. So I sent them live tracking to the ELD. And the guy's like, thank you so much for that, because now I don't have to do all these tracking emails and all that stuff. And I volunteered to do it, because we just couldn't get it to work. That's the way I do my job. And I'll tell you what, we haven't had refusals. I've gotten great emails from our drivers that are like, I'm so happy you're my dispatcher. And I've gotten better emails from brokers too, who I've established relationships with. I got brokers now calling me, asking me if our trucks can handle loads when we haven't even delivered the loads yet, that aren't even on the boards, and I've only been doing this, for 3 weeks, back in the business for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I love this. Someone said, take a look at the Uber patent I shared. Yeah, I can't read that patent shit, man. I tried to read your patent stuff. I couldn't understand that. But don't you have the patent for the Uber patent? Can't you get that? Because you have a bunch of patents yourself. Jeff said, do you need to run a log if you're in a self-driving truck? That's interesting. Are they exempt? And what? Because would you have to go on as driving if you're the one that is sitting in the level 4 truck, not driving it? Ooh, Jeff, I want to find that out now. Are those co-pilots subject to hours of service? They must be, right? Because they have to stay alert. It's not like they could sleep in the back. Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to find that out, Jeff. That's a good one. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Freight Broker Live. It is 9 p.m., 9:02 on the East Coast, and that means I need to shut up because my kids go to bed at 9. And they sleep in the room over there. So I got to go to bed. I appreciate all you guys for watching. I will be live again with a full episode of Freight Broker Live on Friday night. You can, as a reminder, you can download this podcast. Just go into your podcast player, Google Podcast, iTunes, whatever, and search Freight Broker Live Podcast. You'll find this podcast. You can download this podcast, and you can listen to it live, and it's awesome. And I really appreciate everybody for doing that. And I will see all of you